Got a variety of cardboard here.
Yep, we're in Aldi.
And I'm taking all this home so that I can make some of my own boxes with it.
So you're in a hurry? Well, you better calm down.
We're making boxes today. Boxes. Don't box me in. The idea for this video came about because I was starting to get low on these small boxes that I use. I bought them years ago, apparently from Supply Hut, and they're 5x4x2, a very small box. And as you can see, they're not even perfectly assembled. It's not glued properly. But I was getting low and I thought, you know what? Maybe I can make these. Maybe I can duplicate this box with some scrap cardboard. So the first thing is to separate it at the glue joint, the glue flap. This is what it really looks like. And to duplicate this box, I need, with the flap, let's make sure I have this even here, with the flap as they have it designed, which is slightly more than 1 inch, I need about 19 inches of cardboard, 19 inches in length. However, this is 1.5 inch flap, and I could probably get by with 1 inch. And if that's the case, let's move this down a little bit, I should be able to get by with 19 inches of length of scrap cardboard to duplicate this box. Do I have any? Well, let's take a look at what I brought home from Aldi today. This is one of the pieces I brought home. Now it already has a crease here and a crease here, but I have the center part that I can work with. Is it going to work? Oh my gosh, look at that. It's perfect. It's perfect. Even with the longer flap at the end, it's perfect. So let's get these flaps cut off. The large cutting board that I use is just something that I picked up at Walmart, and it has the grooves around the top side, but I always flip it over and use the smooth side. So just to simplify, I'm going to go ahead and cut these flaps off with a utility knife. Now this cardboard isn't rated, there's no rating on it, there's no 32 edge crush test. But what I haven't said is that I don't ship these boxes, small boxes like it is. It's actually too small for the label. I use these small boxes for a lot of things. Small Christmas ornaments, belt buckles, jewelry. I just used it to ship some miniatures the other day. And to allow for the label, I pack them in a padded envelope with 1 air pillow here and 1 air pillow here, the box in here like this, and it works out great. I'm going to keep my cutting board here because I'm going to use it again, but I'm just going to come to the edge of the cardboard, and line this up straight as I can. And then take a marker, fine point marker in this case, and just trace it, basically. I mean, I know I have to cut off this excess. Go ahead and trace out the flap. Hope it's marking, it is. And then trace all of these sections where it has the notches cut out to create the flaps. These are very big notches. They're normally not this big, rarely actually, but trace everything. Do I have it all? I'll show it to you here in just a second. I think I've got it. It's like a puzzle piece. This is what we have. Can you see the lines? The marker lines? I've traced the entire box out. Because this is a straight line, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Utility knife. Now I'm down to this, and I have to cut out the notches for the flap, and then all of these at the top and the bottom, so that I can turn this into the box shape. Okay, tear these pieces out, and there's our flap, which really doesn't have to be longer than 1 inch. This one's about 1.5 inches. And as far as all of these little notches that I need to cut out, I'm just going to freehand it. And I'm not necessarily going to make it as big as what they had. I don't think it's necessary to make it that big. And then I'm just pulling out that little piece. So it's starting to look like the original box, just a little bit, right? Here's the original, here's mine. How'd we do? Line them up. I'd say we did pretty good. Now, I need to be able to fold this like I can fold these. I need to be able to fold this. So we need to do some scoring. I have a simple scoring tool here. And if you like this tool that I'm using, you can find a link for something very similar to it in the description box below this video. So let's go ahead and find the center point here of each of these cuts that I made and just do a little scoring. Not too deep, you don't want to poke through too much. And do that in line with all the notches in the center. Give it a little press. It's starting to take shape. Oh, we have the flap too. So it's starting to take shape. However, we need to create the flaps for the top and the bottom. So we need to score down to our cut, which it happens to be in line with the one side of the tab here. Line it up as best as you can and score it. Again, not pressing too hard, but go over it a couple of times. Okay, let's do that to the other side. See what I have here? I'm creating the flaps. Do the same thing, line this up with the bottom of each of these notches. Let's see how we did. Let's start shaping the box, tucking in the flap, which I will need to tape or glue or both. Just fold the flaps in for now, kind of do a test fit before we glue that flap and see how we did. These two flaps come together really well. These two are not coming together as well, so I was off just a little bit, but most certainly this is still functional and doable. I just need to either glue this with a hot gun, or because it's a lightweight item in this little box, I can probably get by with just taping it, taping the bottom, taping the top. But there you go. I've got my box. I started with this, made by Supply Hut, 5x4x2. And as I showed you, it wasn't perfectly made either. In fact, this is what often happened, is it's just cattywampus because they didn't glue the flap properly. And as I'm comparing these two, my box is sturdier than this box. Yeah, it is. I can't prove that to you on video, but believe me, this box is far sturdier than the box that I bought. I'll have to look up and see what these are going for these days. I have no idea. I couldn't find it immediately on Supply Hut, so I'll have to search a little further. So this is how you can create your own box by taking another box apart and using it as a template. But keep watching here. We're going to make another box, and we're going to make it a different way. I brought this home from Aldi. You can see it's starting to come apart, but that's okay. We're going to take it apart anyway. Just all the flaps that are glued, just separate them. Let's cut away all these flaps. I'm not going to be using these, at least not for this project. Utility knife. I just want to even everything up and get rid of these flaps. Okay, I've taken it down to just a piece of cardboard. It does have a slight bend in it here, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to go with it. What is our length? Well, ironically, it's almost like the other one. It's 19 1/4. The first thing I want to do is to allow for at least a 1-inch flap. So I'm going to measure off 1 inch, draw a line, or I could go ahead and score a line, I guess. I'm going to go ahead and score the line because I know it has to be scored. And let's go ahead and just find the center. I have 8 1/4 inches, so about 4 1/8 is the center point. I'm just going to draw off a flap, and I'm not even going to be concerned about how perfectly centered it is. I'm just going to draw a flap and just kind of angle it, not even worrying if it's perfect. Let's cut away what we don't need. The flap is so important that I decided to do it first. So there's our flap, and it has the crease in it. So what do we have left here? I want to work with even numbers. So let's see what we have left. So I'm going to take this box down to being a 14-inch. So I'm going to take off what I need to take off so that this is 14 inches long. Basically, I'm just making a random size box and see what I come up with. Something to have on hand for those small items that I often ship. So now I have 14 inches in length. Do I want a square box or do I want a rectangular box? That's the question. That's the next question. So I have 14 inches in length. I'm going to make a square box. To make a square box, I need to make a mark at 7 inches, which is the halfway point. And I need to make a mark at 3 1/2 inches, which is half of 7. And then I need to make a mark at 10 1/2 inches so that I have equal amounts. 3 1/2 plus 3 1/2 is 7, plus 3 1/2 is 10 1/2, plus 3 1/2 is 14. So let's go ahead and score those lines. Trying to make sure this is as straight as possible. Let's start folding those up. I got off just a little bit here. Now what do we need to do at each of these score lines? We need to take a wedge out from the top and the bottom. Now how high do we want this box to be? We know it's going to be, I'm making a square box and each section is 3 1/2 inches. So I have a 3 1/2 by 3 1/2 box, ironically, even though originally it was going to be in even numbers. I'm making a small box here. But as far as the length, I can make it pretty much whatever I want it to be. I can bring this down to 3 1/2 inches here in the middle and make a perfectly square box. Or I can just make short flaps on here. But the flaps can't be any longer than half the distance here. So that would be 3 1/2, half of that is 1 1/2. So my flaps would be 1 3/4. But I said I was going to make a square box, and I have 8 1/2 inches here. Let's come down to the flap and measure off our 3 1/2 inches in the center. Drawn right here. I've marked it for 3 1/2 inches. We're going to finish this one into a square box. Score it. Find the other. Fold it here, lining it up, make sure it's straight. Now, everywhere that I scored it, I need to create a notch for the flap. And it's just kind of like a little V, just a little V shape. I'm not even going to mark it off with pencil or anything. I'm just going to cut out, it's just a small V shape. Freeing up those flaps. And they don't have to be perfect. do that on both sides, or you could say the top and the bottom. So like the first one, we've got the basic shape of the box. But what we have to keep in mind is these flaps on the end might be too long. You can see how they cross over. If we are worried about weight, we could cut these back, or we could just go with it. And we have our square box. I'm going to go ahead and cut them back, just ever so slightly, because we want them to meet in the middle. We want them to meet in the middle. So if I take a look here, if I bring these flaps back, they're overlapping about 1.5 inches. We're actually going to cut off 3/4 of an inch off the flaps. We're going to do that on both sides, 3/4 of an inch. Obviously, it's much faster and easier if you have a template already of a box that you've been using. So I just wanted to show you here how you can take any piece of cardboard with a little bit of calculating, a little bit of measuring, cutting here and there. You can create a box for any size that you need, as long as you have a large enough piece of cardboard when you start. So there you go. Now, this obviously is too small to ship in the mail, but what if I needed to protect something in an inner box before putting it in another box for shipping? So there you go. We've got a little cube. It's not perfectly matched on the flaps, but it's most certainly shippable. And the flap can be glued and or taped. Let's make one more. I have this piece of cardboard. It already has 2 defined creases in it. Let's say, for example, I have these pattern booklets that I want to ship. I have 2 options. If I have enough room here, if I take my height, I'm at 1 3/4. If I have enough room on the left and the right, I can go ahead and create new creases here, which I think I can do. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to work with the existing crease, and I'm going to come in 1 3/4 inches. 1 3/4. I'm going to do that on the inside of each of these flaps. This being the outside, this being the inside. Let's go ahead and score this. I will use my cutting board because I don't want to run off my cardboard and damage my tablecloth under here. Making sure the end of this is flush with the cardboard. Straight. And go slow because these things can get out of control. It's not about speed, it's about accuracy. And even with that said, they'll still get out of control. All right, let's see if we can bend this up. I may not have scored it enough after all that chatter about going slow. Also depends on what direction your cardboard is running. You have to work through what you have, and it may not be the direction that you would prefer it to be. Goodness sakes, it must be some thick cardboard. Yeah, I didn't realize how thick this cardboard was. It must be a nice weight. Came from a bigger box, so it probably had higher than a 32 edge crush test, which means the weight that a box can withstand on all the perimeters, on all the edges and corners. This one's taking a little more pressure. Let me go this way. There we go. More leverage that way. So this is what I have so far. Let's bring these back in. You can see that these flap over each other, and that adds a lot of extra weight that's not really necessary. So what you can do is just find your center point for the whole width. I'm at 11 1/4, so 5 1/2 would be 11, and I'm not going to consider the fraction. I'm just going to go slightly over. I'm just going to choose 5 1/2. How's that? I am going to choose 5 1/2. They're not going to be perfectly centered. Sometimes I don't want to think too much. 5 1/2. So let's cut this back to where I decided it was 5 1/2, where I want to cut off the excess cardboard. That's a nice piece of cardboard. You can see how thick and heavy it is. What I typically do is then fold the wider flap in and use that as my guide as to where I need to cut off the excess. Again, I'm just trying to reduce some of the weight, so I'm going to cut this part off. Reducing the weight. And I will save all these pieces that I cut off. I'll save all of these. So let's see where we are with this. And I could have gone this direction too, but I decided to go this way because, no, I couldn't. I didn't go this direction because I didn't have enough at the top and bottom. That's why I'm going this direction. Okay, see how those meet in the middle? Really nice. But we need to create flaps for the top and bottom. Let's think about this now. We need to create flaps on both ends here. We need to create a flap here and here to fold up over. So let's just take a rough measurement. If I want to go, I can bring these down a little bit. I'm just going to stand this up and draw a line and see where it ends up being. This side, I've got just under 2 inches. And this side, I've got just under 2 inches. It's good enough for me. We are not cutting, we are scoring. And I wish I had a longer cutting board and a longer table to use for the scoring, but we'll start with this. Keep it pressed down. Slide it down on your cutting board or table or whatever. And bring that on down, keeping it aligned, and finish off the scoring. I'm not going to try to fold that flap up yet. Not yet. Let's do the other side. Slide it down when you need to. Before we fold this up, I think it's going to just be easier if we cut all the flaps. And again, just cut a slight wedge out of it. Just makes the whole thing easier to come together. I think it's time for me to change my knife, change my blade. Do that to the other side. Now let's use this nice long ruler to line it up. By the way, this is a 24-inch ruler. And let's fold up each individual flap. It's just easier to do them separately than to try to do them all at the same time. To the other side. Okay, let's see how we did. Let's get our books back here. These flaps will fold in. The cardboard is stiff. Like I said, it's really thick. Sometimes we need a third hand to get all the flaps to come in together. And it could help if you tape as you go. As it is, these flaps are completely crossing over each other. They could have been shorter, but they also give it more protection here. It does add a little more weight, and then you just get it all taped up. And you can cut off a little extra. If you don't like the flaps being overlapped completely, we could cut these back a little more. As it is, I don't think there's any way that these booklets, these quilting booklets would get damaged in shipping. It's very, very sturdy. It does help if you tape as you go. You know, get this together, tape it, get this pulled up, tape it, and then finish off with the other side and tape it. And as I said, if you want to, you can cut the flaps back a little more. It's a very protective case for these pattern leaflets. For sure, they're not going to bend. This is a little storage box that would be great for your shelves, for your inventory. You know, slide them in and out. Again, pick this up at Aldi. Let's take a close look at this. It's basically like everything else we've done, only it has extended flaps that fold in over itself. So if you find a box that you like, whether it's a small one like this or a square one like this, if you find something you like and that works for what you do or sell or for storage to put on a shelf, take that box apart, find some large pieces of scrap cardboard and trace it. Trace it and make it from scrap cardboard that you can find just about anywhere in almost any store before they throw them out, but from cardboard that you find for free. I hope you like this video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Vicki with Avante Avenue, and Mark and I will see you soon.